My favorite movie genre or TV show genre is comedies. You know, life is serious enough. It's nice to kind of get away and disengage and just laugh for a while. So I really enjoy comedies. But my second favorite genre, I would say, is spy movies or murder mysteries. I like a good mystery. And the mysteries I like are the ones, you know, the thing about mysteries is you have this hero, and then you have all these other characters, and you're trying to figure out which ones are friends of the hero and which ones are foes. Right? You never really know. Sometimes some of them look like friends and they turn out to be foes. Some of them look like foes and they turn out to be friends. But the ones I really don't like is when the hero's best friend turns out to be the enemy. Right? He turns on his friend there toward the end, and it turns out he wasn't truly a friend, he becomes a foe. And I just don't like that. You know, I'm a very faithful person, and you know, when it comes to life, it really hurts me deeply when somebody that I considered a friend turns against me and becomes a foe. Right? And when you think about that, if you've ever experienced that, when you've had somebody who you called friend turn against you, it really hurts. And I think God feels the same way. You know, we're called to be friends of God, but sometimes we become his enemy, we become his foes, and I think it hurts God whenever we turn on him. That's what we're going to be looking at today. We're in John chapter 4. We're in part 6 of our study through the book. Did I say John?
Yes.
You know, I've made it this whole series without saying that. I'm so worried I was going to say John. James. We're in the book of James. I was just seeing if you're awake. If you've been tracking with me the last 5 weeks, you know what book we're studying. James. James chapter 4 is what we're going to be in today. And James is going to be talking about, are we a friend or foe of God? What does it take to be a friend of God? So we are going to look at that in James. James chapter 4. Let's begin in verses 1 through 6 of James chapter 4, verses 1 through 6. What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, to spend it on your passions. You adulterous people, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Or do you suppose it is to no purpose that the Scripture says, he yearns jealously over the Spirit that he has made to dwell in us? But he gives more grace. Therefore it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Now, if you remember back in 1991, the Rodney King case, Rodney King led police on a high-speed chase on the Los Angeles freeways. He was driving drunk, and police were trying to pull him over, and he was on one of the busy highways in Los Angeles. They finally got him pulled over, and during the arrest, they ended up beating him. The police officers beat Rodney King. But what made this national news is the beating was caught on film. Somebody filmed the beating. Now, to us today, that doesn't seem like a big deal. Everything gets filmed today, right? Everybody has a cell phone with a camera. You can't do anything in the world today without it getting filmed. But this was unique. 1991. People didn't have cell phone cameras back then, but it was filmed. Well, the police officers were arrested. They went to trial, and they were all acquitted of police brutality. And the day that announcement of acquittal was proclaimed, the Los Angeles riots began. and the city burned, people were rioting, and a news station interviewed Rodney King, and he uttered this world-famous question, why can't we all just get along? Right, that's a question that has been with mankind since Cain killed Abel. Right, and it's valid today. Why can't we all just get along? It just seems like there's something that continues to tear us apart, that causes quarrels among us. Well, that's kind of what James is addressing here. James kind of asks the same question. He says, what causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Isn't that, why can't we all just get along? But thankfully for us, James goes on and answers the question. He doesn't just ask it, he actually answers it for us. In verse 1, he says, what causes quarrels and fights among you? Is it not this? Here's the answer. That your passions are at war within you. And in verses 2 and 3, he kind of clarifies what he means by your passions are at war within you. And he gives us 3 examples. The first one, he says, you desire and do not have, so you murder. And the second one is very similar. You covet, cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. And the third, he says, you ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. Well, I looked at those 3 points there, and I said, if I boil that all down to one word, that one word that James is describing is selfishness. All right, our selfishness is what causes all this quarreling, all the sin in our world. Really, I think if you track every sin, every offense that you've ever done or been committed against you, you can track it back to selfishness. Trying to put ourselves in the place of God. Trying to put ourselves at the center of the universe. You know, if the whole world revolves around us, and I see you have something that I think I should have, I have to make a choice. I can feel glad for you that God has blessed you in this way and you have that thing, whatever it is, that money, that job, that spouse, that home, that car, all the things that we tend to get jealous about and covet. I can say, well, I'm glad for you. You know, God blessed you. God knows what He's doing. And that's the proper response. Or if we are at the center of the universe, if the universe revolves around us and this life is only about our own pleasures, then I can say, you don't deserve that. I deserve that more than you. And that jealousy, that envy, that selfishness can lead to some horrible sins. It can lead to killing somebody so I can have what they have. It can lead to fights and quarrels. But it's not new. It's not just in our day and age. That has been going on, like I said, since Cain killed Abel. And we see a real good example of this play out in the life of King Ahab. If you turn to 1 Kings chapter 21, so in the Old Testament, 1 Kings chapter 21, we see King Ahab's having a discussion with his neighbor. 1 Kings 21, verses 1 through 4. Now Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard in Jezreel beside the palace of Ahab the king of Samaria. And after this Ahab said to Naboth, give me your vineyard, that I may have it for a vegetable garden, because it is near my house, and I will give you a better vineyard for it, or if it seems good to you, I will give you its value in money. But Naboth said to Ahab, the Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers. And Ahab went into his house, vexed and sullen, because of what Naboth the Jezreelite had said to him. For he had said, I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers. And he lay down on his bed, turned away his face, and would eat no food. Boo-hoo. This is a king, King Ahab. He desired Naboth's vineyard. Ahab's the richest man in Samaria, right? He's the king, he has palaces, he has land, but that's not enough for him. He desires what his neighbor has. And at first, he does the right thing. He offers to do a land swap, or he offers to pay him for the land. But the land belonged to Naboth. It had been in his family, right, passed down from generation to generation. He didn't want to be the one to give up, the family land. So we respectfully said, no, thank you. I want to keep my inheritance. Well, Ahab had a little pity party. He went home, refused to eat, acts like a baby, right? Goes in his bed, turns his back to everybody, and refuses to eat because he didn't get what he wanted. Well, his wife, Jezebel, comes in and says, what's going on? And so Ahab tells his sob story. And Jezebel, being just as self-centered as Ahab, says, okay, Kent's paraphrase, this is not a direct quote, stop acting like a baby. You're the king, for crying out loud. Get out of bed, get something to eat, I'll take care of the situation. So Jezebel arranges to have Naboth framed and stoned to death. They have him killed just because he wouldn't sell his property. Right? This self-centeredness, this desire to have what other people have, can lead us to grievous sins. It can lead us to murder. It's been going on throughout mankind's history. Ahab saw what Naboth had, and he desired it. He couldn't get it, so he has a little pity party. His wife says, I'll take care of this for you. And she has him murdered, just to fulfill their selfish desires. Selfishness leads to most of the fights and divisions in our world. And unfortunately, self-centeredness comes naturally. Now, you don't have to teach a kid how to be self-centered, do you? Any of us who have raised kids know they come by that naturally. I think one of the first words kids learn after mama and dada is mine. Right? Part of being in this world is self-centeredness. We just learn it and come by it naturally. And that self-centeredness is what drives us to sin. You think about every sin and you take it back to a selfish desire. Self-centeredness, wanting to gratify yourself over others. You desire it. You want it. You've got to have it. James says in chapter 4, you adulterous people, do you know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. It's in verse 4 of chapter 4. See, a big part of this world is selfishness, and if we want to be a friend of the world, if we want to let that selfishness rule in our life, then we become an enemy of God. That's not what he wants. In fact, James is kind of asking the question here, are you a friend or a foe of God? What's it going to be? Because you can't be both. You can't be friends to both. You can't be a friend of the world and be a friend of God. You have to choose one or the other. So how do you know if you are living as a friend of the world or a friend of God? Well, there's symptoms. Like when we're sick, we go to the doctor, we want to find out what it is we have and how do we cure these symptoms that we have. And he'll ask, what are your symptoms? And then he prescribes medicine for those symptoms. Remember during COVID's still around, but when it was first came about, and schools were closed, and then when our school opened up again, whenever anybody was sick, we had to go through these symptoms. Do you have this, this, and this? Some of the symptoms for COVID, is your temperature over 100.4? Do you have a persistent cough? Do you have shortness of breath? Do you have pressure in your chest? Do your muscles ache? All those different symptoms that if you had any of these, then we had to send you to go be tested to see if you had COVID. Well, here in James chapter 4, he shows us the symptoms of being a friend of the world. And those symptoms he lists as selfishness, jealousy, envy, bitterness, and fighting. If you have these in your life, these are all symptoms that you are a friend of the world. You really have to work at overcoming this selfishness. Well, thankfully, James gives us the prescription. If we have these symptoms, he gives us the prescription on how to get rid of those symptoms and become a friend of God. Back in James chapter 4, verses 7 through 12. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be wretched and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning, and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you. Do not speak evil against one another, brothers. The one who speaks against a brother or judges his brother speaks evil against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is only one lawgiver and judge, he who is able to save and destroy. But who are you to judge your neighbor? All right, so here James gives us 7 prescriptions, if you will. 7 prescriptions for overcoming the symptoms of being a friend of the world. James says that these are the things we should do to stop being a friend of the world and become a friend of God. So if you are taking notes on the back of your bulletin, here's the 7 fill in the blanks of your bulletin here. Number 1, submit yourselves to God. Submit yourselves to God. Don't submit yourself to those selfish desires. Submit yourself to God and his ways. Right? Keep God at the center and do what he says. Submit to him. Focus on the needs of others instead of on your own needs. Point number 2, prescription number 2, resist the devil. Resist the devil. James says to resist the devil and he will flee from you. You know, most of us have this image of the devil, that he's some all-powerful being that we just can't resist. He controls our minds, he controls our actions, and any of the temptations that he throws at us, we're just done for. But no, he is a created being just like we are. And James says that if we resist him, he will flee. So if you want to get away from the devil, resist him. Stop giving in to his temptation. The more you give in, the more he's going to hang around and continue to pick away at you. But if you resist him, he will flee. Stand firm. Resist those temptations. Prescription number 3, draw near to God. Draw near to God. James says that if we draw near to God, he will draw near to us. Now, have you ever felt distant from God? Ever feel alone, like God has abandoned you? Well, it's not God who has moved. It's you. You went away. You drifted away from God. So if you turn around and you draw near to God, God will draw near to you. It's kind of like gravity. When two bodies get closer to one another, the gravitational pull gets stronger and stronger the closer they are. So the closer we draw to God, the stronger that bond. Prescription number 4, cleanse your hands and purify your heart. Cleanse your hands and purify your heart. Now, James isn't talking about physically washing your hands here. He's talking about doing the works of the world. Right? We've dirtied our hands by doing the filthy works of the world. He says, cleanse yourself. Stop doing those works of the world. Cleanse your hands. But it's not enough to just stop doing the works of the world. You need to start doing the works of God. You don't want to just be idly sitting by. The old saying, idle hands are the devil's workshop. You want to be busy doing the works of God. Keeping your hands clean, doing the clean works of God. Likewise, purifying your heart means to replace that jealousy, that self-centeredness, all of those worldly symptoms. Replace all of those with godliness. Basically, you put the two great commandments to work in your life. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Remove yourself from the center of the universe. Put God there. Draw close to Him and do His works. Do His works. Offer your hands and your heart to His service. Prescription number 5. Be wretched and mourn and weep. Be wretched and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to gloom. What in the world is James talking about? This prescription needs a little sugar to go down, I think. What is that about? It doesn't seem to fit with the others. Why would we mourn and weep? I think what James is saying here is that it should break our heart when we realize that we've been a friend of the world, that we've been doing the things of the world. We become an enemy of God. That should break our hearts. We need to be weeping and mourning. And that attitude will help us continue to work for the Lord, continue to be a friend of the Lord. It's this attitude that helps the other 6 prescriptions really work. Because we don't want to be a friend of the world. We want to do everything that we can to be a friend of God. Point number 6, prescription number 6. Humble yourselves before the Lord. Humble yourselves before the Lord. And one of the attributes of selfishness is pride. All right, there's pride in your life. That's showing self-centeredness. So we need to humble ourselves. We need to put God before our needs. We need to put others before our needs. Humble ourselves and realize that life isn't about us. Life is about the Lord and all that He's done for us. And we are here to serve Him, to serve His purposes, not our own selfish desires. So we need to humble ourselves. Realize that we are just sinners saved by grace. Saved by the grace of God, just like everyone else. So we shouldn't put ourselves before anybody else. We shouldn't look down our nose at other people. We need to humble ourselves. Realize who we are. And then number 7, prescription number 7. Do not speak evil against or judge one another. Do not speak evil against or judge one another. Now this is another form of pride. Judging others. You think you're better than them. You think you are in a position where you can judge them. No, we need to put that aside. Thinking you're better than somebody else is pride. It's selfishness. Not only that, when you judge others, you're putting yourself in the place of God. Right? Move over, God. I can take this one. I'll judge this person. I know they're bad. No, that's not our job. There's only one lawgiver and judge. And you are not Him. Jesus talked about this in Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5. Jesus says, "Judge not, that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye." I love the imagery that Jesus uses here. Just imagine it, a log in your eye. Right? You're complaining about a little speck in somebody else's eye, and you have this huge log sticking out of yours. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? It just shows how ridiculous our self-centeredness is, our judgmentalism is. It's not our job. We are all sinners saved by grace, so stop judging one another. That's the prescription, those 7 things. If we can do these 7 things, we implement those 7 things in our life, then we will be a friend of God. A friend of God. Well, you're just going to have to follow along with this next one. We just lost the screens, it looks like. James wraps up the chapter with James chapter 4, verses 13 through 17. Bringing it all together now. James chapter 4, verses 13 through 17. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin. All right, here James is just continuing his discussion on pride and self-centeredness and putting ourselves in the place of God. James says it's pretty presumptuous of us to make plans and just assume it's all going to go the way we want it to. Now notice James doesn't say don't make plans. Right? Nowhere in there does he say don't make plans. He just says recognize that you are not in control of your plans. Right? It depends on God. It has to be according to God's will. So just saying, if the Lord wills, then I'm going to do such and such. It's that attitude. It's recognizing that we are not in control. We are not in the driver's seat. I hate those bumper stickers. Don't see them much anymore, but back in the 90s or so, the bumper stickers, God is my co-pilot. Well, God is your co-pilot. You're sitting in the wrong seat. God is the pilot. Maybe we're the co-pilot, but really we're just a passenger. And we're along for the ride. We follow where the pilot takes us. God is in control. Yes, he may be calling us to do certain things. It's okay to make plans. It's okay to make plans for vacation this summer. But don't just automatically assume it's going to go as planned. I'm sure we've all lived long enough to recognize that things don't always go as planned. Proverbs 16:9 says, the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. James kind of puts us in our place here. He says, who are you? You are but a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. When you look at our lifespan, in the time scale, if there is such a thing, the time scale of eternity, we are here just for a blip. Our 80, 90, 100 years, whatever we end up living, compared to eternity, we're just a mist. We're here for a little while and we disappear. Pretty presumptuous of us to think that God's going to bless our plans instead of us following his plan. My mom used to have a saying when I was growing up. She would say such and such, good Lord willing and the creek don't rise. That's the attitude we need to have when we're making our plans. Go ahead and make your plans, but make those plans, good Lord willing and the creek don't rise. Good Lord willing means we understand God is in control. And if he blesses us and then we're able to do that, praise the Lord, we're able to do it. If the creek don't rise, that means other stuff can happen, right? How many of us have planned a trip and then the car breaks down? Or we get sick, or some emergency comes up. Something happens, stuff happens. So don't be so arrogant to think that you can make these plans and everything's going to go your way. Just acknowledge. They may go your way. But acknowledge, Lord, if you will, this is what I'd like to do. This is what I'm planning on doing. But be open to him directing your path. Like Jesus prayed in the garden, let your will be done, not mine. It's a way to take that arrogance out of the equation. Good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. Now, something that James closes with in verse 17, I don't know if we really consider it too much. When we think about sin, we've been talking about, put your faith into action. We're talking about doing things, doing the right things, do. But James says, if you don't do what you know is good, what you know is right, what you know what you ought to do, not doing it is also a sin. So there's the sin of commission. Right? We commit sin by doing something. But there's also the sin of omission, not doing what we know we ought to do. See, God has given us His Holy Spirit. We know right from wrong. Right? We know what we shouldn't do, and we know what we should do. Now, how many times have we been in a situation and we hear that prompting of the Holy Spirit? I want you to do something. I want you to pull over and help this person change their tire. I want you to speak to this person. They look like they're struggling. Sit down, have a conversation with them, whatever. We know those promptings. When we listen and we do it, man, aren't we blessed? It feels good when we listen to the Holy Spirit and do what He's promised us to do. But when we don't do it, it doesn't feel so great. It's called guilt because we know that is a sin. Not doing what we know we should do is as much of a sin as doing what we know we shouldn't do. The sin of commission and omission. So James says not only are we to be doers of the word, but if we don't do what we know we need to do, that is sin as well. This all comes back to the whole concept in this letter of active Christianity. By putting our faith into action. Being doers of the word. And before I close, I want to make one thing clear. We've been talking for 6 weeks about putting our faith into action, doing the godly works, doing what the Lord has called us to do. And I've said this before, but you may have missed it. I want to just stress this point. All of this works has nothing to do with earning our salvation. Right? We're not doing these works to somehow balance the scales because we have so many bad things that we've done and we're trying to balance the scale so God will look on us favorably and let us into heaven. Right? That is not what James is saying. That's not what I've been teaching here. We don't do these works so that we can be saved. We do these works because we have been saved. To show our faith. To show our gratitude in all that the Lord has done for us. Out of our faith comes these godly works. Not so we can earn our salvation. So make sure that is clear. In our adult Sunday school this morning, the teacher on the video that we're watching made this point. He said, faith is belief that shows up in behavior. Right? Faith is belief that shows up in our behavior. That's what James has been talking about. Faith without works is dead. Because faith is belief that shows up in behavior, shows up in good works. So that's what James has been talking about throughout this lesson. That's what I've been trying to teach throughout this lesson. So don't be a friend of this selfish world. Be friends with God. Do what is right. Flee from the selfish desires of this world. Draw close to God, and He will draw close to you. So the question that James is asking us, and the question that we need to be prepared to answer, is when it comes to God, are you a friend or a foe?